Good morning. Hi, good morning. Miss Loughney here, covering for Miss Lopez because she is at school today. I hope that you can all see me and are going to be enjoying what we're going to be doing this morning. Hello to anybody from my class who is watching, and hello to Miss Lopez and the children at our school. Good morning. I don't know if the chat is working or not. I don't think it is. I think Miss Lopez has turned the chat off, which is probably a good thing for today because it would just get me distracted because I just keep on reading what you're saying. So this morning, happy St. George's Day. I'm wearing my red for St. George, so I hope you're all wearing your red at home as well. What we'll do is I think we'll begin today with a poem for St. George. So I've just got it on my phone. Now I'm very, very nervous this morning because this is not what I would normally be doing. And I'm just trying to help Miss Lopez out a little bit, but bear with me and be kind. Okay, so this poem is by a poet called Brian Patton, and it's called The True Dragon. St. George was out walking. He met a dragon on a hill. It was wise and wonderful, too glorious to kill. It slept amongst the wild thyme where the oxlips and violets grow. Its skin was a luminous fire that made the English landscape glow. Its tears were England's crystal rivers, its breath the mist of England's moors. Its larder was England's orchards, its house was without doors. St. George was in awe of it. It was a thing apart. He hid the sleeping dragon inside every English heart. So on this day, let's celebrate England's valley full of light, the green fire of the landscape, lakes shivering with delight. Let's celebrate St. George's Day, the dragon in repose, the brilliant lark ascending, the yew, the oak, the rose. I thought that was a very beautiful poem, because lots of the time when we hear about St. George, we hear about how he defeated the dragon and he killed the dragon and all of that. But actually that poem was talking about how beautiful the dragon was and that he didn't want to do that. And he actually just hid the dragon inside all of the hearts of English people. Now, I know that you have been reading Wonder, the most amazing book in the whole world. I absolutely love it. And I actually read it with my year 5 children 2 years ago. So if any of them are watching this morning, hello. And if any of their siblings are watching this morning, please tell them all that I said hello. We are going to continue reading this. And as we're reading it, we're going to be reading up until the point where August starts his first day of school. Okay, now I know that Miss Lopez, when she was reading to you yesterday, she stopped halfway through a chapter. So we're just going to begin from where you left off yesterday. Please excuse me if I repeat anything that she read yesterday. I'm just a little bit unsure of where exactly you were. So like I said, please bear with me if I read over something you've already heard. This is Julian, said Mr. Tushman. Hey, said Julian, and did the same exact thing as Jack Will. Took my hand, forced a smile, looked down. And Charlotte, said Mr. Tushman. Charlotte had the blondest hair I've ever seen. She didn't shake my hand, but gave me a quick little wave and smiled. Hi, August. Nice to meet you, she said. Hi, I said, looking down. She was wearing bright green Crocs. So, said Mr. Tushman, putting his hands together in a kind of slow clap. What I thought you guys could do is take August on a little tour of the school. Maybe you could start on the 3rd floor. That's where your homeroom class is going to be. Room 301, I think. Mrs. G is room 301, Mrs. Garcia called out from the other room. Room 301, Mr. Tushman nodded. And then you can show August the science labs and the computer room. Then work your way down to the library and the performance space on the 2nd floor. Take him to the cafeteria, of course. Should we take him to the music room? Asked Julian. Good idea, yes, said Mr. Tushman. August, do you play any instruments? No, I said. It wasn't my favourite subject on account of the fact that I don't really have ears. Well, I do, but they don't look like normal ears. Well, you may enjoy seeing the room anyway, said Mr. Tushman. We have a very nice selection of percussion instruments. August, you've been wanting to learn to play the drums, Mum said, trying to get me to look at her, but my eyes were covered by my bangs as I stared at a piece of old gum that was stuck to the bottom of Mr. Tushman's desk. Great. Okay, so why don't you guys get going, said Mr. Tushman. Just be back here in, he looked at Mum. Half an hour, okay? I think Mum nodded. So is that okay with you, August? He asked me. I didn't answer. Is that okay, August? Mum repeated. I looked at her now. I wanted her to see how mad I was at her, but then I saw her face and just nodded. She seemed more scared than I was. The other kids had started out the door, so I followed them. See you soon, said Mum, her voice sounding a little higher than normal. I didn't answer her. The Grand Tour. Jack, Will, Julian, Charlotte and I went down a big hallway to some wide stairs. No one said a word as we walked up to the 3rd floor. When we got to the top of the stairs, we went down a little hallway full of lots of doors. Julian opened the door marked 301. This is our homeroom, he said, standing in front of the half-open door. We have Ms. Petosa. They say she's okay, at least for homeroom. I heard she's really strict if you get her for maths, though. That's not true, said Charlotte. My sister had her last year and said she's totally nice. Not what I heard, answered Julian, but whatever. He closed the door and continued walking down the hallway. This is the science lab, he said when he got to the next door. And just like he did 2 seconds ago, he stood in front of the half-open door and started talking. He didn't look at me once while he talked, which was okay because I wasn't looking at him either. You won't know who you have for science until the first day of school. But you want to get to Mr. Haller. He used to be in the lower school. He would play this giant tuba in class. It was a baritone horn, said Charlotte. It was a tuba, answered Julian, closing the door. Dude, let him go inside so we can check it out, Jack Will told him, pushing past Julian and opening the door. Go inside if you want, Julian said. It was the first time he looked at me. I shrugged and walked over to the door. Julian moved out of the way quickly, like he was afraid I might accidentally touch him as I passed by. Nothing much to see, Julian said, walking in after me. He started pointing to a bunch of stuff around the room. That's the incubator, that big black thing is the chalkboard, these are the desks, these are the chairs, those are the Bunsen burners, this is a grow science poster, this is chalk, this is the eraser. I'm sure he knows what an eraser is, Charlotte said, sounding a little like Via. How would I know what he knows? Julian answered. Mr. Tushman said he's never been to a school before. You know what an eraser is, right? Charlotte asked me. I admit I was feeling so nervous that I didn't know what to say or do except look at the floor. Hey, can you talk? Asked Jack Will. Yeah, I nodded. I still really hadn't looked at any of them yet, not directly. You know what an eraser is, right? Asked Jack Will. Of course, I mumbled. I told you there was nothing to see and hear, said Julian, shrugging. I have a question, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What exactly is homeroom? Is that like a subject? No, that's just your group, explained Charlotte, ignoring Julian's smirk. It's like where you go when you get to school in the morning and your homeroom teacher takes attendance and stuff like that. In a way, it's your main class, even though it's not really a class. I mean, it is a class, but... I think he gets it, Charlotte, said Jack Will. Do you get it? Charlotte asked me. Yeah, I nodded at her. Okay, let's get out of here, said Jack Will, walking away. Wait, Jack, we're supposed to be answering questions, said Charlotte. Jack Will rolled his eyes a little as he turned around. Do you have any more questions? He asked. No, I answered. Oh, well, actually, yes. Is your name Jack or Jack Will? Jack is my first name. Will is my last name. Oh, because Mr. Tushman introduced you as Jack Will, so I thought, ha! You thought his name was Jack Will, laughed Julian. Yeah, some people call me by my first name and last name, Jack said, shrugging. I don't know why. Anyway, can we go now? Let's go to the performance space next, said Charlotte, leading the way out of the science room. It's very cool. You'll like it, August. The performance space. I hope you're enjoying it so far. And I don't know about you, but Charlotte really reminds me of Hermione from Harry Potter because she's kind of very kind, but very matter of fact and doesn't let the boys get away with anything. So I think, yeah, definitely Hermione. So, sorry, I get carried away. The performance space. Charlotte basically didn't stop talking as we headed down to the second floor. She was describing the play they had put on last year, which was Oliver. She played Oliver, even though she's a girl. As she said this, she pushed open the double doors to a huge auditorium. At the other end of the room was a stage. Charlotte started skipping toward the stage. Julian ran after her and then turned around halfway down the aisle. Come on, he said loudly, waving for me to follow him, which I did. There were like hundreds of people in the audience that night, said Charlotte, and it took me a second to realise she was still talking about Oliver. I was so nervous. I had so many lines and I had all these songs to sing. It was so hard. Although she was talking to me, she didn't really look at me much. On opening night, my parents were all the way in the back of the auditorium, like where Jack is right now. But when the lights are off, you can't really see that far back. So I was like, where are my parents? Where are my parents? And then Mr. Resnick, our theatre arts teacher last year, he said, Charlotte, stop being such a diva. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I spotted my parents and I was like, totally fine. I didn't forget a single line. While she was talking, I noticed Julian staring at me out of the corner of his eye. This is something I see people doing a lot of. They think I don't know they're staring, but I can tell from the way their heads are tilted. I turned around to see where Jack had gone to. He had stayed in the back of the auditorium like he was bored. We put on a play every year, said Charlotte. I don't think he's going to want to be in the school play, Charlotte, said Julian sarcastically. You can be in the play without actually being in the play, Charlotte answered, looking at me. You can do the lighting, you can paint the backdrops. Oh, yay, whoopee, said Julian, twirling his finger in the air. But you don't have to take the theatre arts elective if you don't want to, Charlotte said, shrugging. There's dance or chorus or band. There's leadership. Only dorks take leadership, Julian interrupted. Julian, you're being so obnoxious, said Charlotte, which made Julian laugh. I'm taking the science elective, I said. Cool, said Charlotte. Julian looked directly at me. The science elective is supposedly the hardest elective of all, he said. No offence, but if you've never, ever been in a school before, why do you think you're suddenly going to be smart enough to take the science elective? I mean, have you ever even studied science before, like real science, not like the kind you do in kits? Yeah, I nodded. He was homeschooled, Julian, said Charlotte. So teachers came to his house? Asked Julian, looking puzzled. No, his mother taught him, answered Charlotte. Is she a teacher? Julian said. Is your mother a teacher? Charlotte asked me. No, I said. So she's not a real teacher, said Julian, as if that proved his point. That's what I mean. How can someone who's not a real teacher actually teach science? I'm sure you'll do fine, said Charlotte, looking at me. Let's just go to the library now, Jack called out, sounding really bored. Why is your hair so long? Julian said to me. He sounded like he was annoyed. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. Can I ask you a question? He said. I shrugged again. Didn't he just ask me a question? What's the deal with your face? I mean, were you in a fire or something? Julian, that's so rude, said Charlotte. I'm not being rude, said Julian. I'm just asking a question. Mr. Tushman said we could ask questions if we wanted to. Not rude questions like that, said Charlotte. Besides, he was born like that. That's what Mr. Tushman said. You just weren't listening. I was so listening, said Julian. I thought maybe he was in a fire too. Jeez, Julian, said Jack. Just shut up. You shut up, Julian yelled. Come on, August, said Jack. Let's just go to the library already. I walked toward Jack and followed him out of the auditorium. He held the double doors open for me, and as I passed, he looked at me right in the face, kind of daring me to look back at him, which I did. Then I actually smiled. I don't know. Sometimes when I have the feeling like I'm almost crying, it can turn into an almost laughing feeling, and that must have been the feeling I was having then, because I smiled, almost like I was going to giggle. The thing is, because of the way my face is, people who don't know me very well don't always get that I'm smiling. My mouth doesn't go up at the corners the way other people's mouths do. It just goes straight across my face. But somehow, Jack Will got that I had smiled at him, and he smiled back. Julian's a jerk, he whispered before Julian and Charlotte reached us. But dude, you're gonna have to talk. He said this seriously, like he was trying to help me. I nodded as Julian and Charlotte caught up to us. We were all quiet for a second, all of us just kind of nodding, looking at the floor. Then I looked up at Julian. The words, supposedly, by the way, I said. What are you talking about? You said supposedly before, I said. I did not. Yeah, you did, Charlotte nodded. You said the science elective is supposedly really hard. I heard you. I absolutely did not. Whatever, said Jack. Let's go. Yeah, let's go, agreed Charlotte, following Jack down the stairs on the next floor. I started to follow her, but Julian cut right in front of me, which actually made me stumble backwards. Oops, sorry about that, said Julian. But I could tell from the way he looked at me that he wasn't really sorry at all. Not liking this Julian character so much. Okay, a couple more chapters to go, and then I will tell you what your task is for today. So I really hope that you've been listening as I've been reading, and I hope I'm doing a good job, Miss Lopez. Okay, the deal. Mum and Mr. Tushman were talking when we got back to the office. Mrs. Garcia was the first to see us come back, and she started smiling her shiny smile as we walked in. So, August, what did you think? Did you like what you saw? She asked. Yeah, I nodded, looking over at Mum. Jack, Julian and Charlotte were standing by the door, not sure where to go or if they were still needed. I wondered what else they'd been told about me before they'd met me. Did you see the baby chick? Mum asked me. As I shook my head, Julian said, Are you talking about the baby chicks in science? Those get donated to a farm at the end of every school year. Oh, said Mum, disappointed. But they hatch new ones every year in science, Julian added, so August will be able to see them again in the spring. Oh, good, said Mum, eyeing me. They were so cute, August. I wish she wouldn't talk to me like that, like I was a baby in front of other people. So, August, said Mr. Tushman, did these guys show you around enough, or do you want to go and see some more? I realise I forgot to ask them to show you the gym. Well, we did anyway, Mr. Tushman, said Julian. Excellent, said Mr. Tushman. And I told him about the school play and some of the electives, said Charlotte. Oh no, she said suddenly. We forgot to show him the art room. That's okay, said Mr. Tushman. But we can show it to him now, Charlotte offered. Don't we have to pick Via up soon? I said to Mum. That was our signal for me telling Mum if I really wanted to leave. Oh, you're right, said Mum, getting up. I could tell she was pretending to check the time on her watch. I'm sorry, everybody. I lost track of time. We have to pick up my daughter at her new school. She's taking an unofficial tour today. This part wasn't a lie. That Via was checking out her new school today. The part that was a lie was that we were picking her up. She was coming home with Dad later. Where does she go to school? Asked Mr. Tushman, getting up. Oh, she's starting Faulkner High School this year. Well, wow, that's not an easy school to get into. Good for her. Thank you, said Mum, nodding. It'll be a bit of a schlep, though. The A train down to 86, then the crosstown bus all the way to the east side. Takes an hour that way, but it's just a 15-minute drive. It'll be worth it. I know a couple of kids who got into Faulkner and love it, said Mr. Tushman. We should really go, Mum, I said, tugging at her pocketbook. We said goodbye kind of quickly after that. I think Mr. Tushman was a little surprised that we were leaving so suddenly, and then I wondered if he would blame Jack and Charlotte, even though it was really only Julian who made me feel kind of bad. Everyone was really nice. I made sure to tell Mr. Tushman before we left. I look forward to having you as a student, said Mr. Tushman. Bye, I said to Jack, Charlotte and Julian, but I didn't look at them or look up at all until I left the building. Home. As soon as we had walked at least half a block from the school, Mum said, So, how did it go? Did you like it? Not yet, Mum. When we get home, I said. The moment we got inside the house, I ran to my room and threw myself onto my bed. I could tell Mum didn't know what was up, and I guess I really didn't either. I felt very sad and a tiny bit happy at the exact same time, kind of like that laughing, crying feeling all over again. My dog, Daisy, followed me into my room, jumped on the bed and started licking me all over my face. Who's a good girlie? I said in my dad voice. Who's a good girlie? Is everything okay, sweetness? Mum said. She wanted to sit down beside me, but Daisy was hogging the bed. Excuse me, Daisy. She sat down, nudging Daisy over. Were those kids not nice to you, Oggy? Oh, no, I said, only half lying. They were okay. But were they nice? Mr. Tushman went out of his way to tell me what sweet kids they were. Uh-huh. I nodded, but I kept looking at Daisy, kissing her on the nose and rubbing her ears until her back leg did that little flea scratch shake. That boy Julian seemed especially nice, Mum said. Oh, no, he was the least nice. I like Jack, though. He was nice. I thought his name was Jack Will, but it's just Jack. Wait, maybe I'm getting confused. Which one was the one with the dark hair that was brushed forward? Julian. And he wasn't nice? No, not nice. Oh, she thought about this for a second. Okay, so is he the kind of kid who's one way in front of grown-ups and another way in front of kids? Yeah, I guess. Oh, hate those, she answered, nodding. He was like, So, August, what's the deal with your face? I said, looking at Daisy the whole time. Were you in a fire or something? Mum didn't say anything. When I looked up at her, I could tell she was completely shocked. He didn't say it in a mean way, I said quickly. He was just asking. Mum nodded. But I really like Jack. He was like, Shut up, Julian. And Charlotte was like, You're so rude, Julian. Mum nodded again. She pressed her fingers on her forehead like she was pushing against a headache. I'm so sorry, Oggy, she said quietly. Her cheeks were bright red. No, it's okay, Mum, really. You don't have to go to school if you don't want to, sweetie. I want to, I said. Oggy, really, Mum, I want to. And I wasn't lying. Okay, now we're going to leave it there just before Oggy starts his first day at school. And your task this morning, those of you who are watching, we would like, myself and Miss Lopez, would like you to have a little think about if August were to start at your school, how do you think you might react to him? So again, yes, he's a new child coming to your school. We've all had new children start our school, but August is a little bit different, isn't he? He looks different. How do you think he might be feeling starting school? And how do you think other children are going to react to him? And what might they want to ask him? So we had Julian asking that really silly question about was he in a fire? Okay, you probably wouldn't ask a child who looks different to you, were they in a fire? When you get to know them, you might want to ask them questions. But remember, this is the very, very first day that you're meeting this child. What might you want to ask him? So your task is to write down some questions that you might like to ask August, if he were to start at your school, and maybe write down how you would feel if a child like August, and what would you do to make them feel comfortable starting your school? What types of things might you do? Now, we're going to leave it there because I don't actually have anything else to do with you. It's been so lovely to do this, and I'm hoping that you've all been nice and kind. I can see lots of these, but I don't have a chat, so I just hope that you're all well and keeping safe, and love to all of the families that are watching, and hopefully things will be back to normal soon and we'll get to see all of your wonderful faces. Okay, take care, guys. Thank you so much. Bye, Miss Lopez. Bye, children at our school. Bye.